Mr Deputy Speaker, the Chancellor's statement last week, which was the first proper budget in 17 long and chaotic months, reflected the unacceptable reality of 13 years of Conservative failure. Growth downgraded, wages lower now in real terms than they were in 2010, the highest tax burden on households since the Second World War, and over the last 2 years, the biggest hit to living standards since records begun. And constituents reflect this, like the constituent, the resident in Newport East, who said to me last year for my gas, I was topping up £20 a week. It's now over double that. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. I cannot afford to live. Last week's budget said nothing to her and nothing to all those struggling with the cost of living crisis. That £11,000 hit since 2010, which due to stagnant wages, which was outlined by my right honourable friend from the front bench so ably earlier on. And there was no redress for my constituent whose plans for retirement this year were ruined by last autumn's disastrous mini-budget, which wiped out a substantial amount of her pension. Politics may have moved on, but our constituents are still paying for the economic carnage caused by the party opposite in that mini-budget, including homeowners with average interest rates on outstanding mortgages now twice as high as forecast 2 years ago. It's notable that the Chancellor did find time for one permanent tax cut in the budget, that £1 billion tax reduction for the richest 1% of earners via changes to pension allowances, that outrageous tax giveaway for the rich, while millions of other older people on modest incomes will find themselves paying more tax because of the 6-year freeze on personal allowances. It's a clear reminder that whichever Tory Chancellor sits in number 11 Downing Street, and we've had a few over recent years, the same skewed sense of priorities remain. One of the themes of today's debate is innovation, something which is at the core of our steel industry in Lamworth Steelworks in my constituency in Newport East. That the word steel didn't feature once in the Chancellor's statement or the budget document itself speaks volumes. It proves that despite the Chancellor fleetingly using the phrase industrial strategy last week, this government doesn't have one. We have a business secretary who, when asked whether Britain should have a steel-making capacity in the future, carelessly said nothing's ever a given, and we have a Chancellor, well, a succession of Chancellors who have been unwilling to go as far as European counterparts in supporting our steel sector on the crucial issue of decarbonisation. The German and French governments have already spent billions of euros and committed even more towards greening their domestic steel sectors, where there have been other ambitious investments in green steel in Canada, Belgium and Sweden. UK Steel highlight that a lack of a similar capital funding for decarbonisation here in Britain is making our steel industry unattractive for investors. We'll await further details from the support pledge for carbon capture, utilisation and storage. There was no information last week on where or when this will be spent, but we clearly need an improvement on the current infrastructure fund. On industrial energy costs, Make UK noted that the budget does little to tackle the real and very immediate threat manufacturers face, with rocketing energy bills far higher than their European competitors. No surprise then that UK steelmakers will stump up a whopping 63% more than their German counterparts for electricity in 2023. The recent announcements at Liberty Steel show just how serious this issue is. I mentioned the impact of energy costs for businesses in relation to steel, but the same is true for other sectors, including hospitality. At last week's meeting of the All-Party Group on Hospitality Events and Food and Drink Businesses in Wales, we heard examples from hoteliers and publicans about how their businesses have been effectively locked into contracts that were agreed at very high levels on energy costs last year before the fall in wholesale prices take place. They want the government to make it easier for customers to withdraw from expensive energy contracts signed during the chaos of 2022. Rising energy prices also have an acute impact on the hospice and home care sector, as mentioned by the Honourable Member for Enfield. Many hospices are facing up to 5-fold increases in their energy costs. For these vital facilities, reducing energy consumption is simply not an option. I know that Hospice UK recently met with ministers to put these points across and called for increased support beyond the reduced energy bill discount scheme. It doesn't appear that this has been heard, and I would ask ministers to look again at that with the sector. Finally, on Wales, last week's budget confirmed the 23-24 settlement for Wales is £900 million lower in real terms than was projected at the time of the 2021 spending review, with no extra funding made available for health, social services or local government. And there was a derisory £1 million extra in capital funding for Wales in 24-25. The Welsh Government are right to point out that while the UK Tory Government talked up a budget for growth, the reality is they've shown no interest in building a way out of the current financial crisis. We deserve better than a government which will keep on bumping us along a path of managed decline.
Yeah.